Do you think drop bears hate koalas?
Not particularly.
Welcome to Probably Real, a podcast where we talk about our favorite conspiracy theories and cryptids. Forgot it there for a second.
Okay. My name is Aislinn.
And my name is Trinity Amethyst.
Welcome to our fellow believers.
And welcome to our fellow skeptics.
All right. We are approaching the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. The end of the school year, not the end of the year.
Oh, yeah. The school year. Sorry.
We're approaching summer.
Yeah, we're approaching summer. And I forgot how hot it is.
Oh, yeah. I'm melting. We live in Southern California and we're melting.
It turned into like 89 degrees and I was like, oh my gosh.
The desert reared its
dying.
ugly head.
It's not even in the hundreds yet, and I'm like, wow.
Oh, but it will be. It will be.
Soon enough. Speaking of heat, let's talk about our cryptid for today.
That was a lovely transition.
Yeah, I yelled it a little bit, but speaking of heat, this lovely little cryptid comes from the Australia. Just kidding.
Australia.
It comes from Australia.
No, it's fine.
You know, where we have wonderful, dangerous animals like crocodiles and kangaroos and shrimps on the Barbies.
You consider shrimps, dangerous animals?
It depends on if you're allergic or not.
I guess that's fair. So what is our cryptid?
So they are called drop bears. Contrary to popular belief, drop bears are not real. Well, sorry. Probably not real.
Drop bears, if I remember correctly, are a lot more probably not real than most cryptids are probably not real.
Yeah, like...
Significantly.
I don't particularly believe in the drop bears.
I don't think many people do, judging on their origin.
So, drop bears are mainly used to scare or attract tourists, you know. They're a species of koala bear, but... they're carnivorous, they are very dangerous, they hide atop trees and doorways awaiting their next victims, and they're just practically terrifying.
Australians must have so much fun with tourists.
Seriously, they're like, these little buggers have 3-inch fangs that'll sink right into your neck. And you're like, oh my gosh. I can't imagine not knowing about drop bears and then visiting Australia, and I'm like, oh, okay. And you know, these Australians like to have a lot of fun and they give people some advice on what to do, including placing forks inside of the hair, putting Vegemite or toothpaste spread behind the ears or in the armpits, urinating on oneself.
Wow.
And talking in an Australian accent.
So, basically all of these things are to make the tourists look as
stupid as
dumb
possible.
as possible.
Yeah. It's like when tourists wear, like, those cork hats.
Mm-hmm.
They're clearly tourists, and you're like, okay.
That's a tourist, if ever I've seen one.
That's just another one of those kooky peoples. So, I have some facts about these little guys and how they became popular. So, now they're kind of classified. There's like this entry in a museum that classifies the drop bear as a Thylacardus plamentis. Thylacardus plamentis.
Sounds right-ish.
Yeah, I'm like, it's kind of, which is basically like a raccoon cat thing. And then a koala mixed together. So they're just a large predatory marsupial related to the koala.
Sort of like a little hodgepodge there.
Yeah. It's just really funny because there was this museum. It's the Australian Museum had a small display that had artifacts which said may or may not relate to actual drop bears. And so people were like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, they were freaking
wow,
out.
Drop bears are real? Question mark, question mark, question mark? That's crazy.
And then the museum curators were absolutely laughing for the next
was dying. I've been researching these for a while because when you research it, it's like hard to figure out if they're real or not. It's kind of like, you know how people are always debating on narwhals or not?
People debate on narwhals?
Yes, on whether or not they're real.
I've heard that with ligers, but...
Yeah, ligers and narwhals, and then drop bears are in that mix, but they're for sure not... sorry. They're probably not real. They're for sure not real. Wink, wink. Yeah, it's so funny if you look and they have like drop bear posters and they're so graphic and terrifying and it's just so funny. And I love seeing signs and they're like drop bear crossing. It's so hilarious.
You know, this is an attitude I can get behind. This sort of group effort to freak out a bunch of tourists.
To just
like,
mess around with a huge group of people.
It's so fun. Like, but with like a cryptid. It's just so good. It's so good. We need this in California. Where's our California cryptid to scare people?
Our California
We
cryptid
need one.
should be like, what would people think? What would people believe? Oh my gosh. So there's these sludge monsters that just like roam the sewers and the streets and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they just come out when it rains. We'll call them, what do we call them?
What do you call a sludge monster? Is that its name?
Goopers.
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 Yep. That'll
right?
just launch fear into the hearts of tourists.
Yeah, that was the worst idea. We should just call them It's.
It's, and then get them confused with the movie.
Exactly.
Hey, they do live in sewers. There we go.
Yeah. And for the drop bears, sorry, this is random. There was this article on a 2012 paper published in the Australian Geographer, and it like referenced to attacks from people. Yeah. They said they're more likely to attack tourists than people with Australian accents. And
How
they put that in
convenient.
the article, and I was like, oh no, honey.
How many tourists do you think after that were walking around with bad Australian accents?
I know, and they're like putting Vegemite behind their ears.
Oh no.
Poor babies.
Poor babies. Alright, so our conspiracy theory for today. This one is actually quite believable in my opinion, but we'll see how you feel about it.
I love the believable ones.
Those ones are my favorite because you listen to them and you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So, the conspiracy theory we're talking about today is the June 1962 escape from Alcatraz.
Really?
Yes.
Yay! Okay.
So this one was recommended to us by Caleb. Most people know about Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary off of the coast of San Francisco. I mean, it's a pretty famous prison. It was home to criminals such as Al Capone and Robert Stroud, and it was known for being filled with, like, cruel inmates as well as cruel staff.
It also reminds me of Azkaban.
It does.
Every time I hear Alcatraz, I think of Azkaban.
They're so, like, just similar. The way they sound, the way they
work.
The way they work, yeah. I mean, both of them are known for being pretty inescapable, too.
Yeah.
But somebody made it out, and that's what I was gonna say, is it's also known for being nearly inescapable, but only nearly. And that's where we're at today.
Yes.
So, on June 11th at night, or in the morning of the 12th, we don't know, 3 inmates, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin, escaped Alcatraz on a lifeboat that they had made. Originally, there was one other member, Alan West, but he got sort of stuck in his cell for a bit, and so he couldn't escape with them, so sorry, Alan.
Shoot. That sucks.
I know. You have this whole big plan, and then you just get left behind.
You're like, sorry, bud, you missed it.
Almost there. So before we get into like the actual conspiracy, let me just tell you a little bit about how they escaped. So this plan they cooked up was like ridiculously elaborate. You know how like in movies and stuff, they've got this like sort of cliche setup for how a prison break would go?
Oh yeah, and it's like, you gotta be super lucky.
Yeah, this is exactly that plan. This is what started that cliche, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
So firstly, over a 6-month period of time, they used tools such as saw blades and spoons they stole to widen they had these ventilation ducts in their cells, and they widened them until they could fit through it.
Spoons?
Yeah, they literally used spoons and saw blades, and I think I read that they used like they made a drill out of a broken vacuum cleaner engine. So it's like this super hodgepodge thing. And do you know how they masked the sound of their working?
How?
Frank Morris, one of the prisoners, would just play the accordion.
No way.
Yeah, that
That's
was his plan.
amazing. He
And
had
it worked.
That's so good.
The crazy thing is that it worked. Once the vents were wide enough for them to fit through, they started escaping their cells, and I mean, like, this isn't like the day they actually escaped. This was sort of like a long period of time thing where they would just sneak out of their cells. They'd crawl to the top of their cell blocks where they collected things they found and stole around the prison to build like themselves a raft and life jackets and stuff. But in their absence, they made these little like these fake heads out of soap and toilet paper and paint, as well as real hair that they stole from the floor of the barbershop. And so they had these like intricately made heads, and they'd just leave them in their beds with like clothes and pillows and stuff under the blanket, so it looked like they were sleeping, and it worked.
Oh
It
my
worked.
gosh.
Nobody questioned them.
I don't understand.
No, I don't know how they got away with all this.
How cliche.
Like I said, I'm pretty sure this made the cliche. I don't think this was a cliche at this point.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was 1962. How much of a cliche could it have been back then? But yeah, none of this on its own should have worked. It just shouldn't have. Probably the wildest sort of innovation they made. They stole this instrument called a concertina, which is sort of like a small accordion. They stole it from one of the other inmates, and they used it. It's like a mini accordion, right? Just a little hand accordion. And they used it to inflate their raft.
No, they didn't.
They did. They used this little instrument. And my thing is, wouldn't that have made noise? How did these guards not know?
Out of Alcatraz?
Alcatraz.
This isn't just a normal prison. This is Alcatraz.
This is Alcatraz, yeah. Things weren't too great, I don't think.
What else did they do? Is that it?
No. Okay.
Oh.
So this is they've got their raft. They've got their life stuff. It's all hidden up on their cell block. They've got their holes so they can leave. They're all ready to go. They've got their fake heads.
They took them with them?
No, they left them, and that's the only reason why they weren't caught, because apparently the guards hadn't learned by then.
6 months.
6 months. 6 months they did this, and nobody caught on.
Okay.
Nobody even noticed that they were digging giant holes in their walls. Like, what? So, on June 11th, the men escaped from their cells and to the roof. They crawled through this vent and descended 50 feet to the floor by a kitchen pipe. So not even something that they had. They were just kind of like, convenient. From there, when they got to the floor, they climbed 2 12-foot barbed wire fences around the prison to get to the beach. And from there, they made their escape. But here's the sad thing. You know, we mentioned Alan West earlier, the guy who got left behind. So unfortunately for him, his vent opening earlier on had been like visibly crumbling around the edges. So he used concrete to try to fix it so that the guards wouldn't catch on, you know?
Oh.
But doing that just sealed his vent closed. So on the night that they were supposed to leave, he spent the whole time reopening his vent. And when he got out there, they had already left. So he literally, he literally just went back into his cell and just went back to sleep.
Oh, poor guy.
He's just like, all right, goes back.
That kind of hurts my heart.
I know. It's okay though. He didn't get in trouble for trying to escape because he told investigators what exactly their plan had been, and he was very cooperative. So.
He was the snitch.
He was a snitch, but they were already gone, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they know how they got out since they're already out, you know?
Yeah.
So that brings us to our main question and our conspiracy. Did Morris and the Anglin brothers make it to the beach alive? Because we don't know, you know? Because, you know, Alcatraz is an island, so, you know, they took their lifeboat out and maybe they made it. The FBI officially concluded that the inmates, due to rough seas and frigid temperatures, drowned. They say that it's possible that they could have made it, but it was unlikely. So there's no evidence certain evidence one way or another at this point. So it's kind of all just like up to speculation. The police and FBI and the government are just like, we're pretty sure they died, but I mean, if you see them, let us know.
Yeah. They probably died.
I'm pretty sure they drowned, but I don't know.
Just to be safe.
Yeah. So many people, including several universities, researchers, and so on and so forth, they sort of jumped onto this whole story and started running experiments to see whether or not the inmates likely survived. Overall, most of the results from these tests say that they could have survived, but that they would have had to leave Alcatraz at midnight, no earlier or no later, because if they had left at like 11 or 1 a.m., the weather would have been too violent for their raft to make it, so it would have been like upturned or something, and then they would have froze to death, yada yada.
But they didn't find a raft or anything?
No, they didn't. They found some pieces off the coast. Actually, they found a shred of some of the material that the raft was made out of on Angel Island's beach. So, I don't know. Some sort of evidence that they made it. Actually, first, let me say some of the evidence that they didn't make it. Some things that people use to say that they definitely did not make it was, the whole, like, it was too crazy, they couldn't have made it.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that whole thing. But that's their main sort of reasoning. They couldn't have made it because it was too stormy. But another thing was this Norwegian freighter reported seeing a body floating near Alcatraz and said that it had prison clothes on, and there was no reported missing prisoners at the time, and this was about a month after the escape.
Oh, shoot.
So they're like, where did this body come from? But of course, that was never confirmed, so we don't really know. It's kind of a bit wishy-washy. But some evidence to the other side. In 2011, a man named Bud Morris, first he said that Frank Morris, one of the escaped prisoners, was his cousin, which, I mean, they have the same last name, so maybe.
Yeah.
Said that, first off, he had been bribing the prison guards for years beforehand.
Whoa.
I think he said 8 or 9 times he had bribed the guards on Alcatraz. And then he said that, like, soon after the escape, he met Frank Morris at a San Diego park, and his daughter said that she was there meeting quote-unquote dad's friend Frank, but she didn't know about the escape.
Oh.
So she was only I think she was only 8 or 9, and she was there just as a kid and meeting some guy named Frank. And she didn't know anything. So that's interesting. The whole England family said that it's their opinion that the brothers were still alive. They said that they've gotten a Christmas card from John, and that he also called them. And Robert Englund, which is one of the two Englund brothers' siblings, confessed on his deathbed that he had been in contact with the brothers until 1987 when he lost contact with them. And I mean, I don't know why he would lie on his deathbed, but who knows?
Yeah, that'd be a weird thing to lie about, too.
Yeah, just obscurely when you're dying, like, oh, by the way, I have been talking to my brothers this whole time. What? I don't know. But one of the biggest pieces of evidence that people use to say that the prisoners made it, or at least the Englund brothers made it, is there's this photo that forensic teams have concluded are likely the Englund brothers in Brazil.
Oh.
Yeah, so people have looked at this photo and everyone's sort of just like, yep, that's them. But it was interesting. There's a few investigators who they think it's sort of a detour, because they're like, well, if the Englund brothers are alive, they probably want us to look for them in Brazil, but they're no longer there, they're somewhere else now. But
yeah.
I don't know, it's interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they did it. I don't think they made it.
You don't think they made it?
No, from what you've told me, because, okay, I, have a hunch, kind of. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't feel like they made it, but I can see why, I want them to have made it, because I think it's just kind of, it's ridiculous, and it's like...
They worked so hard.
I know, it's you want them to make it, and I think it's just human nature to want to see, how far people can go, and, what they can get away with, and stuff like that. And so... I can see why everyone is like, oh, I'm pretty sure they made it, but I don't know. I've seen Alcatraz before, and I feel like that kind of messes me up, because, it doesn't... chances are looking pretty slim for those boys, for those little boyos.
The chances were looking pretty slim, but they were also looking pretty slim for them to escape Alcatraz at all.
Yeah, I'm impressed,
I like to
honestly.
think luck is on their side, or was on their side. They're all... Even if they did make it, they're all dead now, so...
Yeah. I feel like, what is it? Karma, they had too much good karma to actually make it.
You think that fate had to balance the scales there?
Yeah, I was like, the universe has got to tip those scales at some point.
That's such a tragic story, though. You go through all of this and you make it and you make it and you make it and you make it and then you just die on the ocean. That would...
Tragedies are the best.
Ugh.
I love
pain.
tragedies.
Of course you do.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on our podcast today. We hope you learned something new or at least had a good time.
Yeah, you could leave us a review if you feel like.
Yeah, if you enjoyed the show, it really gives us a good boost in confidence. And also, if you're on iTunes, it helps us get up those iTunes algorithms. We have an email that you can send conspiracy theories or cryptids to. It's probablyrealpodcast@gmail.com.
Our Twitter is probrealpodcast.
Yeah, you can also send us stuff there.
And a huge thanks to Elise for making our intro music.
As always, it's awfully lovely. You can find her stuff at HeyElise516 on Twitter or at her SoundCloud at Elise Haywood.
And remember,
the drop bears are waiting.
And Alcatraz is just the real life Azkaban.
Good night.